talking about the quadratic formula. The only two things you need to know in this section is the quadratic formula here. This is what it is. And the discriminant. The quadratic formula itself is a way to determine what x equals in a quadratic. So x equals this part of my quadratic formula. The discriminant, it helps to determine if we're going to have real solutions, numbers that you've heard of before, or if we're going to have imaginary solutions, numbers you've never heard of before. So the discriminant is simply this part here under the square root. That is the discriminant. Now, if the discriminant, if d for discriminant is greater than 0, then we have two real solutions. If d, the discriminant, equals 0, then we have one real solution. This doesn't happen very often. If d is less than 0, then we have no real solutions. And if we have no real solutions, that means we get imaginary solutions, and we'll talk about those tomorrow. So, the only things we need to know now are the quadratic formula itself, and then the discriminant. The discriminant is the part under the square root. If this number is bigger than 0, two real solutions. If it equals 0, one real solution, and if it does not equal 0, then there are no real solutions. Alright, so now let's do some examples. This is my quadratic. I want to figure out what x is. So what I need to do is I need to plug in a, b, and c up here appropriately with the quadratic formula in order to find x. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to write this in standard form. In standard form, we have a, b, and c on one side, and it equals 0. So I'm going to move this 3 back over here. To do that, I need to subtract 3 from both sides. So I'm going to get a minus 3 here. What that's done is it's taken the 3 and moved it over here. In standard form, the quadratic is ax squared plus bx plus c equaling 0. This is where we're going to get the a, b, and c that plug in up here. So when I have it in standard form, I need to first do a negative b. Well, which one of these numbers is b? This 3. So this 3 is going to go in for that b right there. I'm going to get minus 3. Next, I want to do plus or minus. Then I have a big square root. Inside my square root, I want to now take my b value, same number I have out here, and I want to square it. Next, I want to subtract 4. And then I want to put a in here and c in there. Well, which number represents a? That's the 1 right here. And which one represents c? Well, that's this one right here. So my negative 3 goes there. After that, we do 2, and then a, which was my 1, goes here. This will tell me what x equals. So now what we want to do is we want to evaluate this to find out what x is. So in order to evaluate, I just have to solve it out. This is just going to give me a negative 3 plus or minus. When I take my negative 3 and square it, I get a 9. 4 times 1 will give me 4. Then times this will give me this part, so negative 4 times negative 3 will be a positive 12. All of this over 2. So 2 times 1 just gives me the 2 on the bottom. Now I still want to keep evaluating, but I've run out of room. So I'm going to try and squeeze it in right here. So I have a negative 3 plus or minus 9 plus 12 is going to give me a 21. That's under my square root. And I'm dividing this whole thing by 2. You can leave your answer like that with the quadratic formula. That is beautiful and pretty. This is what x equals. X equals -3 plus or minus the square root of 21 all over 2. So I've solved for x using my quadratic formula. Let's try another one. I'm going to leave this up there so we can remember standard form. So this time it's already in standard form. So now I just have to plug into my quadratic formula to find x. So x equals the negative b, so negative, and this is a -9 this time. Then we do plus or minus. Then my b squared, my b again is a -9, so I'm squaring a -9. Minus 4, a is going to be a 4. Then c is going to be 3. I'll put this all over 2 times my a here. Now that I have them plugged in, I just want to evaluate. So I have a negative, oops. A -9 just gives me a 9. Plus or minus, in here, my -9 squared, that's going to give me 81. Positive because when you square it, it makes it positive. Here I have a -16 times my 3 is going to give me, all right, 1848. And this is all over 8 when you do 2 times 4. Then 81 minus 48 is going to give me 33. All this over 8. So this would be my answer for x. X equals 9 plus or minus the square root of 33 all over 8. Let's try another one. No. So this is what we do when we use a quadratic formula. Now let's use a discriminant and see how many solutions we're going to get. So for this next one, we want to determine what kind of solutions I'm going to get. So I have, oops, minus 9x plus 7. So for this one, we just want to determine the discriminant. So I just use this part. So I take my b, which is a -9, and I square it. Then I have minus 4, and I take my a value here, and my c value. This is my discriminant. I want to know, is this bigger than 0, 0, or less than 0? So I'm going to evaluate. This gives me 81. This gives me 16 times 7, and that's going to be 112. Did I do that right? Then from here we want to subtract these. So if I have 81 minus 112, my answer is definitely going to be negative. It's going to be a -31. So I got a negative number, a -31. Is my discriminant greater than 0? Nope. Is it 0? Nope. Is it less than 0? Yes. This tells me I have no real solutions. So my discriminant says I have no real solutions. Let's try another one. Again, for this, we just want to determine the discriminant. How many solutions is it going to have? So I'm going to plug in just for my discriminant. So I want to use my b, which is a -4, and square it. Then my a, which is a 1, and c, which is a 4. going to evaluate this. If I take my negative 4 and square it, I get 16. That's going to give me 4. 4 times 4 is going to give me 16. So 16 minus 16 is going to give me 0. When my discriminant equals 0, I have one real solution. So this is the quadratic formula. We either plug in appropriately or we talk about the discriminant.